It was well attended. And so I'm hoping that by pushing for this to be advertised campus-wide, that will not be, it will be the first for all lecture series to be advertised campus-wide. There's great benefit to this program. It's a way for the university to reach out to the community. And more than anything else, the speakers that you have, and I'm not speaking of myself, but you have wonderful speakers, experts that students should have the opportunity to hear them. So it is in that context that I see this as a great opportunity to connect with you and with the community, with the friends of the university. The topic itself is very complex. The ad says that by the time we have these lectures, January 6th committee will have concluded its investigation. As you may know, the investigation is still in the making, and the biggest witness that the committee would have, or is expecting to have, is former President Donald Trump. There are a lot of issues there, whether he agrees to testify. Never mind if he agrees to testify, will he pledge the Fifth Amendment? We've seen in previous cases where this has happened, so it's not an automatic deal. More than anything else, the chair of the committee plan is to do this before the new Congress comes to power. And there is a reason for it, is that there is no appetite for a Republican-driven Congress or led by Congress to continue this investigation. From the start, the investigation is perceived as bipartisan, as a Democrat initiative, and not a bipartisan, despite the fact that there are a few members. The chair of the committee is a Republican, but it's still, the perception is that that we get from every Republican representative or senator, this will not be, this will not continue if the January 6th committee doesn't end, doesn't finish its deliberation. So it's significant, the date is very significant. So from now on, we are expecting the report, the final report, to come in December. From what we hear, there is a sort of a charge against the former president, and so on and so forth. So the report will be, in more ways than one, reflecting a view that this is a movement led by private agenda, Republican agenda, Donald Trump particularly, and it serves the country ill, and it's counter what the American believes in. But that leads me to another major question. One is, what does January 6th represent in the context of American politics and global politics? And second, is America under a threat of losing its democracy, or being, as some describe it, being a non-democratic, driven by private agendas that seems to favor, agendas that seem to be in line with what former President Donald Trump has said so far, how he has presents himself, and the attack that he had on the Democrats, President Biden, and so on and so forth. So is there a real threat here that democracy in America is gone or will be gone? So let's begin with the idea of January 6th, what it is. it's very, very interesting that this is to an outsider, to someone who lives or who is far away from the United States, either in Europe or Latin America or in Africa or Asia. What we've seen on Capitol Hill on January 6th amounts to a coup d'etat. However you want to describe it, in the literature of international relations, comparative politics, and political science in general, this is an attempted failed coup, a coup designed to take over the American system and put in place a leader who was pushing, who refused to accept the results of the elections. It's against the democratic norms in the American system, and for that matter, anywhere in the world. So let's start with that. So, and let me begin by saying, I should begin by saying that the views that I'm expressing here are not that of the California State University Dominguez Hills. This is my views and reflects what I believe as someone who follows American politics and who teaches it, who taught it at one point or another. So it's an opinion, and the university is not held accountable for what I said. I'm supposed to say this at the front. That's what advancement tell us. That's how our public relations tell us when we speak in events like this. So from my perspective, this is really, however you measure it, however you put it, it is a coup, and a failed coup to take over the American system because of several reasons. One is that we had elections. Second, the former President Donald Trump legal challenge was found with no evidence. So it was rejected. And third, it's the expression of the elections were certified, or were about certified by the entities that are in charge of this elections. So the Congress meeting was to support that, to endorse the certification of each state. They were not there to change the outcome of the elections. And that's how the system is. So from that perspective, it's a failed coup. Now, how did the media present it? I think we still are challenged. There is this idea of not calling the event by its proper name, particularly the social science terms or the political science terms, or what it is, in fact, is a coup. We got a lot of explanation. One, this is a violence. This is a violent act. This is unique in American history, and some want further to compare it to other violent activities that happened in the past few years. And that's more about personalizing the problem and seeing it as a unique, special case that doesn't address the fundamental problem of American democracy, which is here people voted, and there is this group of people who are refusing to accept that outcome. So you get the term violence, you get another one is insurrectionist, meaning that these are a group of people who are just unhappy with the existing order, and they want after they use violence. Mutiny, some even used mutiny, and so there were several terms to explain it. So historically, it's very important to clarify that. Now, the biggest question that I like to address is the idea of what is the significance of this event, and how does it, of this committee, number one, but more so, which is the most important thing, how is it connected to the big picture? Is American democracy a threat? When you follow the event following the elections 2020, you have several attempts to restrict the voting. We've seen restrictions in several states, dozens of states passed laws that restricts the voting. This comes from for example, making restrictions, requirement, IDs. Another way of restricting the votes is by shortening the time window for registrations. Another, even the boxes, dropping the boxes were discussed. Voting prior, there are restrictions for voting prior to the election. There are several restrictions there, and all these restrictions have been led in the states by Republican leaders who initiate these laws and were approved by the elected officials. Most of the time, these are places where the Republicans have the majority in the legislative branch and also in leading the states, the governor. So from that context, this restrictions vote had a goal is to restrict, is to limit the number of voters. The theory behind it, that the Republican or the conventional wisdom these days, and it's been for a while in American politics, that the fewer people vote, the more likely the Republican will win the elections. But, and that could be true. The restrictions are designed there with a perception that the Republicans have always voted, are likely to win elections with a lower turnout and a higher turnout. But that couldn't be always the case. Take Virginia, for example. Virginia has taken what is it? The idea has not pursued any restriction vote rules. To the contrary, it has expanded voting to all parties. So in the past elections, what the Virginian did is vote into office. The governor, as well as the legislator, won. The Republicans won that election despite the lack of restrictions. So it's not always the case. So from that perspective, that could be just one variable that one has to take with a grain of salt. So the restriction I'm trying to clarify are not always automatic. That the perception that in American politics, the fewer people vote, the likelihood that the Republican will win can be challenged, particularly in the age of social media, particularly in the bipartisan politics that we have seen of recent. The challenge, therefore, or the threat is not there. The threat is what the former President Donald Trump has been able to achieve. Former President Donald Trump is very, very shrewd and very capable and a successful leader, however you want to portray him, in projecting, has had success in projecting his views. One wonders today, for example, all polls show that the vast majority of Republicans, 71% of them, believes that the elections is stolen, that 2020 elections is stolen, that President Biden did not win the election. Now, that has to be in context. And this is where I think the threat to American democracy come. And this is where the January 6th committee, despite whatever they do, will be, and let's say they go through and present a strong case, and they win, the Republicans win back Congress, or they continue to be a majority in the House and win more seats in the Senate. Let's examine even that scenario. Even if that scenario passes the test of guessing, in the end, what is happening in American politics, and the fact that you have over 70% of people think that the elections are stolen, that is what defines the future of American politics. It's not what the reports of January 6th will say, it is what's happening on the ground. Let's look at specific. There is a lot of literature there about local politics, and usually we say all politics is local. But in this case, that's where the threat is. Consider, for example, if we go back to what Donald Trump did shortly after the announcement of the election. He did several things. One of them is engage in a social media and a public media, use all the sources to project himself as a winner, and that he lost the election because of rules. Number two, so you have a huge media campaign designed to do that, to support the motion, but he won, but the system was against him. And remember, before the elections were out, he came out and announced that he won, when in fact the elections were not over. So he was looking at numbers. The moment they show that he's on top, he came out and said that, and he maintained that course of action. Compare that on January 6th, when you had for hours, Capitol Hill was under attack, where lives of legislators, senators, and House representatives and American workers in the building were under threat. Donald Trump took his time to come out and say, well, go home. But he did that long after it was obvious that this has to end. Records show today that he was fully aware that he was watching TV, some say, although that's really more of a he says, she says, things can kind of this thing. But in the end, he was not quick, or he did not take the same level of seriousness or of interest in declaring himself, in asking an end, in calling to end the January 6th violence. He was more interested in himself, or projecting himself as a winner. So he did it very quickly in announcing he won, but took his time to take a position in the January 6th. What would happen after that? I think Donald Trump and his circle learned great lessons. And simply, this is connected to local politics, that you have to have a certain, what do you call it, requirement or evidence to overrule or to change or overturn the elections. One of them is basically a record that this happens. There were more than 60 documents or 60 cases presented by Trump, legal cases before the courts, and they were all rejected. There wasn't a single one of them that was accepted. Lesson number one learned is that if you want to change the system, don't do it from the top. Do it from the bottom up. So what's happening in local politics? This is why local politics is very, very important. So Trump, back in February of this year, sent a memo to all Republican and sympathizers and the 71% specifically who support him that the election was stolen, a memo that becomes the strategy of how to win the election back. And the strategy has 4 components. One deals with recruitment. Second is with training. A third one is the challenge. And the last one is overturning the elections. Recruitment is very, very interesting. The focus is not at the top level, because Trump would tell you that I tried at the top level. I even put pressure. And 1 hour conversation, as we know, to force a Secretary of State to change the outcome or not certify the elections in Georgia, only to fail. So he failed at the top level. So the strategy now is to shift to the local politics. And the local politics, that's where it happens. And it happens not only who votes, that pushing you to go and vote or not to vote, or creating or making the system is too complex. There are so many, you hear all these challenges that are happening in American politics. You get the impression that for me to vote, to use absent ballot or to vote prior to the election is becoming more difficult, to a point where is that drop box, the mailbox? As you know, you could look at around you and some of those boxes are gone. So on the one hand, you have this idea that we need to complicate the system and make it more difficult for voters. Who are going to be affected is the minorities, the Democrats, the people who actually have to work on Tuesdays to make a living, the people who don't follow politics or who have given up on the system. And usually these are people who have, priorities in life. So why not having elections on a weekend, as an example, or why not expanding the hours of elections after 5, or making all other things. So the focus of Trump, the lesson he learned and his team from all those rejections, the court rejections, and his failure to take the political system, is on creating the perception that voting now is very difficult to do. And I'm bored. I don't understand it. Things will be the same. So discourage people from voting. So now that's the focus on who is voting and who is likely to vote. In the bigger picture, this also connects with the changes in American demography on the population. As you are fully aware, the United States is changing, the demographic are changing. Now, in certain states, the Hispanic community is stronger than what it used to be, and so the African-American community. The white votes, the white population is relative to the minority populations in decline. So we are leaning towards designing a system or leaning to demographic change that has a huge impact on American politics and political parties. That's why the Republican try to project themselves as a party, as a diverse party. That's why the Democrats are eager to project themselves as a party for all. But in reality, and what helps Trump's case is that you have this division in American politics around demographics and ethnicity has affected the Democratic Party. Today, the Democratic Party, there is a huge difference, a gap between the young leaders. And usually we refer to them as progressives, as if they are not Democrats, they are a different brand. And usually when you start to look at using terms, progressives, the tendency is that they are leftists. And in the American politics, everything that is left is communist. The Democratic Party is not helping in that way. It's divided. The new leaders, the young leaders, have different views of American politics. They want social justice. They want the system to serve them, the human, what they call, to better the socioeconomic conditions of minorities. They're asking some real questions. They're asking social justice questions. Well, the leadership, that would be the file. The ranking is really still the same. I mean, you look at the history of President Joe Biden, you look at the history of Nancy Pelosi. These are leaders that have been in power for a long time, and they have had experience in leading the country and maintaining the status quo. So the challenges that the Democratic Party has also plays into the picture that American politics is too divided, and more than anything else, for Democrats, look, I mean, our views are not represented. And then, there is this idea of the promises that Democrats make to minorities, that, when we are in power, we'll do better. And they do this during the election time. When in reality, the situation for a lot of disadvantaged people continue to be the same, regardless of how we project it. So this fragmentation, these problems that the Democratic Party has, try to compare it to the Republicans. The Republicans have a single message, have projected the unity of the party, and have, to extent, having a reason for giving Donald Trump the power he has today. To think that 71% of Republicans think that the elections are stolen in 2020 is, difficult to imagine, because we all know that there were no evidence that this happened. So the first changes, or the first thing that Donald Trump learned from the experience of 2020 is that you really have to reach out to local politics. And local politics has to do with, number one, who vote. And what he did, and what they've been doing, is projecting this image that that voting is too complex, and that the election has been stolen. And they do this very well on networks, particularly the radio and television, social media, all of that. So they haven't been successful in that. But that doesn't stop there. And this is where real threat is. It's also the shift into looking at the institutions that are in charge of elections. And it starts with the precinct. So what the Republicans have been pushing is get their people to volunteer and to work at the precinct level during election day. Be part of that team that counts the vote. So in a call back in following the memo, or the letter or the memo that President Donald Trump sent to his constituency back in February, asking the Republican to take action to make sure the upcoming election is not stolen. That letter found strong appeal and led, for example, to many Republicans voting, registering to be part of in the precinct to work on election day, to count the elections, and to do the things that the organizers. So just a number that I could give you. There were the Republicans sent the call to register to be part to work on election day as volunteers to 61 precinct and an organization and states. 41 of those states responded favorably, to a point where there were 8,500 Republicans signed to be part of the election workers. And so the total number of Republicans involved in the precinct working on election day, so huge increase, 8,500 of them registered against none from the Democrats. What does that mean? In practical terms, what this group is expected to do is be a watchdog for the elections. And this is the second step of what they are asked to do, basically collect evidence for anything that they see problematic. For example, just imagine yourself, one of the workers, and you are a Republican, believing that the elections is denied. You only have to report what you saw and report it in a form that they sent you, that you have there. And this is all following the guidelines of the elections. They are not doing anything new. These are rules that were always there to guard against fraud. But according to a lot of, we haven't seen any frauds in the American election. Whether this is true or not, the point is that we haven't used these rules in the past. And basically what it means is that, let's say I'm one of those workers in the elections in the precinct. When I see a person that appears to me suspicious, for example, a younger person, you might you think, well, he is not 18, or so. Regardless of what, you report that in the form, and you say, person, I saw this, and then you report your name, the information, where you are located. And then there is a hotline number there that connects you directly to a lawyer. And the purpose of this is to establish evidence for changing, for overruling the rules, overruling the elections. Now that brings you back to the second level. Who certified the elections? Well, you have the commissioner, the electoral board of elections. You have the Secretary of State. Trump learned a big lesson that the position of Secretary of State in the state is the most important position, because this is the person who is sort of clearly in charge, who is in charge of this election. The Secretary of State can say, well, I'm not going to sign this because I have some suspicions that there was some fraud. There was actually a case in Nevada where a person on the election board decided not to certify, not to vote for the certification because, and I'm quoting, he had a gut feeling that this is not right. There was something wrong with the machines, with the electoral machines. And he said that he just feeling, and I'm not going to say them. So in the end, what happened in that situation in Nevada, the board did not certify the elections. And, that kind of thing that could happen. So Trump learned very well a lesson that the person who can make all these things go away is the Secretary of State. But the Secretary of State, in order for him or her to say no, to overturn the elections, he has to have evidence. So what the workers are doing at the precinct level is getting exactly that evidence. And that evidence is run through a lawyer, a legal team, and that legal team has now evidence to bring back to the next stage. So what is very, very interesting about this, this is not a general sort of formula. Go out there and work in a precinct and make sure that there is no fraud and report it. No, this is targeted specifically to areas of the precincts that are controlled by the Democrats, because the perception is that It's the Democrats who are cheating, not the Republicans. So what these workers are doing, this 8,500, according to New York Times, what they're doing is exactly targeting the precincts that are controlled by the Democrats. In the final analysis, what you have evidence that should there be a need to overturn the elections, you can do it now. So when you go to the court, you would go with evidence presented from a local level, from your neighborhood, because that day you forgot your ID, for example, and you filled out a form and you did not sign properly, or something like that, where they make your vote not counted with obvious evidence. That's what the game is. So so local politics is becoming a very, very important thing to do. And President Donald Trump has learned his lesson, is that instead of taking over from the top, you taking over from the bottom up. And so what does that mean in terms of the January 6th committee, when we talk about all this investigates and all these lies that are happening? What it does is that it emphasizes the whole perception that the Republicans are telling us. It will be used as yet another example that the Democrats are cheaters and are there to destroy the American dreams, all led by all led by what we see as 71% of the Republicans doing this. Does this mean that the American democracy is in threat? Yes, and it has been there for a long time. Where does it leave us? The question is, where do you fit in this process? The need for us to be more involved in politics is very, very important. What Trump said as is going to be a precedent, that there will be other ways, that there will always be ways of how to manipulate the vote. And you can do it by insisting, repeating a statement that have no foundation, or presenting lies and saying later, well, I made a mistake, or changing your opinion. All these are sort of becoming more of a culture that reinforces the fragmentation, the polarization of American politics. But at the end, what it boils down to the voter themselves, being able to distinguish facts from fiction, and being able to work and contribute to to do your civic duty in ways that you see them beneficial. One could say that if this phenomenon, looking at the fraud issue, is done nationally in all different places, inclusive of all precincts, or includes everyone, that could be a good thing, because we need to watch the system. But also to back the question, the fundamental question is the lack of mechanism to oversee these elections, namely that we should not be relying just on volunteers. We may have to look into mechanism of ensuring, just same thing when we go to the court, where before you picked as a jury, you go through several tests by both members. So you try to get the most objective person to be on that trial, so the trial appears to be fair. So maybe that's where we're heading, and we should be heading. But are the Democrats up to the challenge? I don't think so. The message so far has been clear that the Republicans are dictating the agenda for us. And just pick up again, going back to the January 6th committee, this is a very important committee. America was under threat. But this is one issue among other issues that we see with Donald Trump. There are cases in the court everywhere. Every day there is a new case. And every news item is linked to violations or alleged violations in the American violations of crimes or allegation of crimes. So it's very, very important to look at it from that perspective. That what's happening on January 6th is a result of so many factors, but the people who are learning the lessons from it seems to be Republicans and who are led by Donald Trump, who has a vision of his own and is relying on those who support him, and he has to create the perception that would serve him. Now, the question there is, does this kind of momentum in favor of the Republican continue should Donald Trump be indicted or brought to justice? And that again brings us to another area. And again, we're shifting away from January 6th, but the point I was trying to make earlier, January 6th is just an instance of many areas. But just pick up the idea of will Donald Trump be what other things he did while his power over the Republicans did for so many years. There's a case that one should take into consideration and sort of learn some of the lessons of where we're heading and where the Republicans are likely to be successful than the Democrat. During, as you all know, the Attorney General embarked on a series of moves to take back documents that Donald Trump took with him to his home in Florida. In other cases, the time that the Justice Department took is really too long. Now, understandably, you're talking about an former American president. So there is the respect for his position. There is the difficulty of getting the documents as well. But there was evidence there that the Justice Department should have acted earlier or sooner rather than later. And we see it with other cases. I mean, we had at one point one Secretary of State or national official in the, I think in the Clinton administration, who took evidence from to his home and was, judged right there. He was banned from punished for what he did. You have the cases of Hillary Clinton also, where we did look at the Congress. I mean, the Justice Department took action right away, and they were very sort of they acted within the process as it should be. With Donald Trump, we took a lot of time. But there was a moment in this, we're still continuing of looking at the document, what was secret, whether Donald Trump violated some American laws, whether American intelligence communities under threat. There was a point where Donald Trump has asked, or his team has asked to the court to have an independent official to look at the document. Well, at that point, the judge ruled in favor of Trump, but it so happened that the judge was a pro-Trump, or a judge who was nominated and appointed by Donald Trump. And he was selected from, as you all know, what we call the Federal Society. And the Federal Society has been in action or has been active in American politics and the legal system for decades now. And it's a federal society whose views are conservative, leaning towards, today ultra conservatives. And they're the one who are behind sort of a lot of decisions that are overruled and that address or that are some perceived attacks against American civil liberties, namely the right to abortion and things like that. So federal, in this case, the judge who presided ruled in favor of Trump was a Trump nominee. Now, let's assume that the case was appealed. Well, the next step is also a judge. There is also a judge who is nominated by Trump, appointed by Trump, and is from the Federal Society. And let's say that judge rules in favor of Trump and that the Justice Department decides to appeal. So the next case is the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is now conservative. So what the Trump administration did also is, on the one hand, you have this focus on providing evidence. You're not just focusing on the voter, but you're also focusing on gathering evidence to support that there were some illegal activities that made me uncomfortable. And in the American system, it is based on reasonable doubt. So, and that's what's happening. If you repeat a lie constantly, at one point he said, maybe there is this, and I would prefer that than that. So creating a reasonable doubt will benefit or would benefit the Trump position. So on one hand, you have this voting, the focus on the counting the votes at the precinct level, and the officials that are in charge of certifying the election, making sure that they are Republican, supporting the naysayers or the deniers, as we call them this. On the other hand, you have this long process in the court that's becoming more conservative because of the judges that come from the Federal Society. So at the end, when you bring this together, you have legal evidence that will be presented to a judge who is most likely sympathetic to the view that there is something wrong here, and the judge could be driven by political agendas more so than the legality of there. But you're also creating some evidence for them. They don't have to be, real evidence. You just have to create the perception that there is a reasonable doubt. And that's the threat to me, to American democracy, is the penchant towards creating conditions that would favor one group against the other. Now, if we go back and look at and put this into perspective, why this is significant, and this is more than Trump, it's about a systemic change that needs to be looked at seriously. The fact that you have people who are concerned, who have fears, the people who have, in more ways than one, lost faith in working together is something to consider. The bipartisan politics these days is very rare. So when you put the two and two together, you'll find yourself, I'd be happy with, with where we're heading, namely that it's okay for me to be, supporting some conservative social agendas. Abortion is one case. I am looking after, so I'm happy with it. On the other hand, you find people who are, wait, this is a violation of American politics, a violation of civil rights, and it's clear deviation from what we're all about. So that's the outcome. Underneath it, connected to that, is other issues. You know, our voting system, the college delegates are the one who votes for who in the final analysis decide who rules America. The big businesses, all of that. So it's a very, very dangerous turn in American democracy. Now, that's what the world sees. The world sees a transformation in American politics. They just don't see the partisanship that we are looking at, that we're experiencing. They see an American politics that is taken over by extremists. So the perception that the January 6th left in the third world, in countries other than the US, is now America, is like another country in Africa. So in fact, there was some tweets there that say, well, it's time for the United States to learn from African politics, that they should learn lesson. It's for the first time that Africa is now teaching the United States of how to conduct democracy. And this is not unique in American history. The war today sees what's happening in Ukraine as also a result of an American politics that is driven by money, by military weapons, the selling of military weapons, and the idea that there are certain people in the world that are better than others. I'm not saying that what's happening in Ukraine, we should ignore it, or we should not be given it in a sense. But the perception you get is the life of the Ukrainians seems to be, to the Americans, more important than the lives of other people in many parts of the world. The amount of AIDS assistance, whether in weapons or in food or in economic terms, far exceeds what we give to other nations. More than anything else, at a time of crisis, prices rising, one wonders whether those moves are justified. And again, not to deny, not to be insensitive to what's happening in Ukraine, but those are the things that the outsider is looking at. And January 6th, therefore, it's part of that package. In other words, it's a continuation of the same thing. What's very, very important is that there is also a change of views internationally. That in the past, there was always this perception that African countries, Latin American countries, look at the United States from two eyes. One eye is that this is a country where dreams becomes true. This is a country that has a long democratic tradition, and it's only a matter of getting Americans to know the system, to get them involved in politics, to do the things that they're supposed to do. That the system in itself is fair to everybody. It only lacks people to get involved. So there is sympathy for minorities. There is sympathy for the position that the United States is in, focusing on the people more so than the leaders. So that distinction, what we've seen in the Ukraine, what we've seen after 9/11, seems to be blurry. In the old days, we used to say, you may not like American politics, foreign policy that is, but you really love their genes. So as long as you sell their genes, you're okay, because what you're doing is that you're selling American life. This is also reflected in how, when you go around and look at the embassies, in the past, prior to 9/11, you really literally could walk to an American embassy with no problems. I mean, there will be no walls. It will be maybe a security guard that would ask for your name, and it's always nonchalant. I mean, you could walk in and people will receive you with a big smile. Of course, we have all the idea that customers are always right. So the Americans were all welcoming If you go to receptions that the embassies held, they were always well attended. You'll meet an ambassador who is in his jeans, or if it's a woman, they're all casual. There was that kind of humble or humility that people used to experience with the Americans. And never mind that behind the scene, America is also an imperialist power. But the embassies, the places where the foreign, the world interact with America, at the embassies as a consulate was a friendly place. It was sort of, and I could tell you, in Algiers, getting to the American embassy was the easiest way. On a personal level, I got a scholarship to this country. I heard nothing, I knew nothing about the American system. I just was ready to come here with no destination whatsoever, except that, congratulations, you have a scholarship to Boston. The Ministry of Higher Education, where I got my scholarship, gave me no information whatsoever. And now, as a note, we were expected to leave in September. And, a lot of universities and graduate schools start accepting application in November. So this is one of, there were 4 of us, not many. We were basically sent to the United States in a matter of 3 or 4 months, learn the system, learn how to apply, learn how to draft a letter, because none of us spoke English. But do you know who helped us? It's the attaché or the staff in the American embassy in Algiers, who, when we saw us and we told her about, we're excited about going to the United States, there she told us what the challenges we're facing. She gave us a list of the universities where to go, where to apply, and she gave us guidelines of how to be admitted. Until today, I still tell this story of how the Americans were very friendly. And it was because of them that, we got, if you want, we didn't waste our first year. We learned English and got to the university the second year. But that was the norms in American embassy. You walk in Baghdad or in other places was simple. The American embassies reflected that dream, that equal opportunity that we may have. Today, I just got back from Algiers, and I could tell you, you go from a security check to a security check. It's a huge, process you have to go through. Understandably, there are issues there, security that we all know. So what you have is that the American diplomacy is detached from the people. And now you have that perceptions going on. That's what we see a person in the street of Cairo, Nairobi, Bonn, or Berlin in Germany. Compare that and imagine yourself, you see this news about people taking over the American system, the January 6th event. That adds to the perception that America is not the same, and that we now have to shift away from this. We have to be more concerned about our sort of national interest, to put it blankly, that we are no longer that the perception has changed of American democracy. January 6th add to that. Now, let me just add one more point to this, and I'll leave it I'll be more than happy to take questions. When Ukraine war happened, the discussion at the time also can be connected to the January 6th. The trend in American politics during Trump was that Trump wanted America for the Americans, that he wanted to think first about America than the world, that he really didn't think too much about issues of human rights. Case in point is Saudi Arabia, where Trump said, following the killing of Khashoggi, that the United States is not going to sacrifice its business deals for the sake of an individual person. That's the position they took. Europeans were engaged before the Ukrainian in creating a security mechanism for their own. They were preparing themselves for giving a role to themselves to protect their security. And what makes it very interesting at the time is that Joe Biden, when he came to power, was also projected the same Trumpian vision. He took decisions, the withdrawal from Afghanistan without the consultation of the Europeans, his allies, and he was engaged with another secret deal, the building of a nuclear submarine, without the knowledge of the countries that were involved in that. The point is this, is that those kind of policies reinforce the perception that America is all about itself. And more than anything else in this case, that there is really no difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And that just as, and that January 6th is not, it may be an exception at the time, but it's becoming more of a norm, that America will continue to be divided. And we in the outside world have to be concerned about. Now, the fact that there was a system and January 6th says, committee is part of that. What we've seen so far is an attempt to right in what is wrong, an attempt of seeing American politics in practice, how it's implemented, how it works, and that the lesson that the world is also looking at. So, in a nutshell, the January 6th committee and what it has done well for projecting the American institutional, structural mechanisms to build or protect or implement democratic rules. But the perception that we got from the events has also lead us to believe that there is a serious threat against American democracy. So in the end, who is going to win? Is it the January 6th committee, which emphasized so much on the legal implementation of democracy, or the January 6th events that gives us another perspective? I think the threat to American democracy is real. Will the American institutions be able to correct it? Yes, they will, but it may take a time. So, with the elections coming up in November, if the Republicans win the elections, gain the House and the Senate, then we are going to see an end to the January 6th committee. But that end of the January 6th committee will only reinforce a perception in the world that American politics is no longer what it used to be, that the love of genes is now, or the loves of American way of life can be threatened, particularly if you are a foreigner, if you are a minority. And that's really where the image that we are projecting in the world, as I have seen it, and it's being reported. I'll stop here, and probably, Jeffrey, I don't know if we are going to take questions. How does the process work? What do we do? Oh. Oh, chat. No, I don't have. What do I do?
Do you have any questions? Anything come in the chat? Right. Yeah, where's Denise? Unreleased, where's Denise? Where's she gone?
That I don't know.
Oh,
So,
you have that. Oh, right there.
what? Like what? YouTube?
So click on that name right there. No, click on it.
What do I do?
What does it say? Yeah. You're gonna ask for questions. I don't see these.
No, she's not asking a question.
Click on it. Oh, and release it, take her off the mic, put on her phone.
No, but she's not asking a question.
No, take her off so I want to see it, because she can see, but I can't see. Unmute, ask to unmute.
She's not asking a question.
I'm gonna go ahead and ask her, but she can see because she's actually a host.
Oh, so she
can
is,
help you.
Denise?
Yes.
Okay. So we could just ask her, she would hear me, right?
That was funny. And then we ended up
Denise,
not
if you could release yourself. Jeffrey's telling me that you will lead us in this next part. I'm told to keep going and speak. I could speak for a long time.
And
So
Dr. Salhi, we do not have any questions in the chat at this moment.
Oh, I think I'm told that we don't have any questions.
Dr. Salhi, if there are no additional questions, if you want to continue with any follow-up thoughts or your choice if you would like to wrap.
I don't see any questions. I'm just wondering if this is a technical issue, but I'm told there are no questions. And then let me wait 2 minutes to see if there is any question. Then I have.
Go ahead, Donald.
Elaine has a question. Yeah. I think there is a question.
Actually, it's Delina. I wanted to note if you thought any other governments will have any oversight over what's happening in our country, similar to what our governments had been doing in the past when they saw injustices in elections overseas. Is there such a commission in place?
It's a very, very interesting question. I think you raised the question of number one, I don't think there's any government who would do what the United States is doing, intervening in the business of other countries, regardless if it is for a good reason or a bad reason. So that one is out. I think where and things have happened, and there are reports there. You have non-governmental organizations like Human Rights Watch and similar organizations who write report about violations of human rights, and they ask people to participate, to be active in calling the representative, making them aware of what's happening. There are lobbyists also on behalf of human rights organizations that are doing that. There is also, and this was really a serious question, and a lot of people don't sort of see this. United States was a leader or led the establishment of the International Criminal Court or the World Criminal Court. This is a court that can act to intervene or allow the United Nations to intervene in countries that are accused of violation of crimes against humanity. We've seen this in the case of certain countries. United States under Clinton pushed to create this court, and they had in mind what was happening in Serbia. But later on, the United States withdrew just after it invaded Iraq. And the reason that happened was that the United States found itself liable for initiating lawsuits against American soldiers or American companies in Iraq. So it withdrew from that. What that meant is that there is no venue for outsiders to bring American leaders before this court, because under those rules, you could actually raise a case as long as you prove that it is a crime against humanity, that the lives of American in the United States, in this case, what was happened against in the capital, putting people under threat, the killing of a guard or guards, the injuries that occurred, amount to violation that affects the whole world. You could bring that under the international law, but that's a long shot. But the fact that the United States is no longer a member, that makes it difficult. So the answer really is no. That's it. I mean, it's up to our citizens to hold the American leaders responsible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elaine,
Okay.
you have a question, you can unmute.
Okay, my question is, what do you think the Democrats need to do? What do you suggest they do to help fight against the extreme right agenda of the Republican Party?
I think it's obvious, is have a clear message and stay on point. Have also an agenda and engage in a practical policy. Use the position you have as legislators, having the majority in the House, for example, having the president, the executive, to make those changes, and particularly accept the fact that the party is changing, that the vast majority of the file now, or the members, are young people and minority, and who want some change. That's that's the practical thing to do. The other thing is that be consistent in your image and not be afraid. It seems the dominant trend in the Democrats continue to appeal or to project this idea that we can only win the elections by being moderate, by appealing to the middle class, by taking moderate views. And that may not be the case. What happened in Georgia is a clear indication that if you rally people around a message, clear message, then you can win the elections. The third really option is to be brave. I mean, we've seen again and again that Democrats, when it comes to taking positions against the Republicans, tend to be either spontaneous or followed by a timid move. I mean, and that's what the problem is that the Democratic Party doesn't have its house in order, and it doesn't have a clear-cut message. And you could see it in elections. The Americans won the elections, or the Democrats won the elections when they have that clear message, and they are able to appeal to their constituencies in ways that the Democrats, the Republicans can't.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I think there is another question. Is anybody?
Yes, Pearlie, can you unmute? You still muted, Pearlie.
Yes, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, Dr. Salhi, do you believe that, I put it in the chat there, let's see. Do you believe that another coup attempt is imminent should the supporters of political figures such as Trump, or if they are again in political control?
No, not at all. I don't think you need it. The way the cards are playing at this point is that the Republican, and I'm not saying this to be partisan or to put the blames on partisan, but I'm just looking at the facts, which the Republicans don't look at for that matter, is that the ground is now set for Republican success in the voting, be this through gerrymandering, through redistricting, winning governmental positions, gubernatorial positions in the Senate of the state. They are in a very, very good place to do well. And the latest emphasis led by Donald Trump, the memo February 22nd, 2022, set the path for no need to be violent. You just have to go and count the votes, create evidence that there's some illegal things happen, and concentrate on your opponent, the Democrats, and you have the evidence. So the point is that for now, the strategy seems to be gather evidence, hire lawyers, take it to a court, and the court is your friend because see how many judges Donald Trump nominated in a span of 4 years. He nominated more than Barack Obama did. And the reason for it, all the nomination that Barack Obama had, the nomination of judges and appointment of judges, as I say, were blocked by Congress, which was in control by the Republican. So every political position counts. The Congress, House and Representative, House and the Senate are on the verge of being controlled by the Republicans. So when you have the legislators on your hand, and then you have a federal court, judges who are drawn from a background that supports you, the federal society, the Supreme Court, you really don't need another coup. You just need, you're smarter than that. And I think that's the other lesson Trump learned. They're really, really good at, doing what they believe is something that what serves them well.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Bill.
Could I give one follow-up, Denise? Would that be okay?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, and then Elaine's next.
Okay, but what concerns me is it seems to me that there's a breakdown in the check and balance that was put in place to keep any extreme from being too extreme, to keep it kind of balanced. It seems there's been a total disregard for that. Everybody's stepping over in everybody else's territory as far as being corrupt and influenced. It's almost as if they were there themselves, although they're in some other place, executive office, influencing what goes down. That's my, I'd like to say that's my realistic view of what's really happening. And then I was really surprised at the number of people that support that idea, although it may not have been, I believe Trump gave the platform, President, a platform for these feelings to come out, not that they weren't always there. That's my thought. So the check and balance system, I'm very concerned about that because there's such a disregard for that, it seems.
And I could not agree with you more. I mean, that's really the fundamental problem, is that institutions are not doing what they're supposed to do. They are instead being used and misused to serve certain agendas. And part of it is the failure of involvement of the public. I mean, look at today and the role of the media today. when you hear, just listen to the news, for example, and you all follow it or you may not follow it because you don't you have the perception that, this is too much for me, I don't care. But in the end, today, when for example, the basic problem that we face is high prices, unemployment. I mean, we're so happy to project this data that, employment is not, we're doing better in job creation and so on and so forth. But the fact is, there is a lot of misrepresentation of those facts. The fact that, for example, a person who is unemployed after 9 months is deleted from the data, is no longer counted for. So how many of those people have lost their jobs, who are no longer in the market, who could not find jobs? That's the problem where it is. I think the role of the media you have news every day. I mean, how many, when you watch Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, there are so many things that are happening, and it's all geared with an ideological message that in the end, you find in yourself listening or watching, to events after events, and nothing really serious about, the high prices as an example, high inflation. That comes just as a threat as a news for 5 minutes, the most, a discussion, but then we move on to another topic. There's a book that I always use when I was teaching and when I was asked about American politics, and it's a question really that I asked when the very first meal, the dinner I had in Washington. Again, there were 4 of us, and we're meeting with this Algerian who has been here for quite some time. And I came from a tradition where, there are strikes, workers, when they have, they are organized, political parties are organized. In other words, when there is a problem, there is that, involvement. And at the time, our host, who happens to be, as I said, he was telling us live about the United States, that the problems that the country was facing, the challenges, all of that. And our question was, if there is all this problem, why there are no strikes? Because we really don't have any strike. What his answer is that, you can't do too much when a country has, at the end of the day, happy hour, where you could buy drinks for half the price. Meaning that we are so much involved in our daily lives. We're so busy with things that we forget the big picture. We tend to come back to the big picture when it touches our pockets. The Vietnam wasn't popular because, it touches lives that we are directly involved. Whenever taxes happen, we tend to do that. But connected to that is a book. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And Amusing Ourselves to Death looks at Americans' way of life. And and basically what it says is that we created Hollywood images or ways of distracting us to avoid discussing or looking at the real problems we face. There is so much today about the social media today. I can't believe it now. We're listening a point of view on national television, spending 2 minutes on a tweet that somebody somewhere who has no relevance is now discussed as a tweet. Mm-hmm. Where is a discussion about our real lives? I mean, bring people who have, you just walk around our campus or around here, and you find homeless everywhere. You stop. How about a story about that person in the street? And how about looking at the social responsibilities? What do we need these days to help people overcome the challenges of high prices, homelessness, and all of that stuff? We don't see that. So in many ways, we are really, really in a situation where more of the same. I mean, you have a media that makes everything, find always ways of entertaining us, or consume us with the news that is so diverse. So we lost the main, our focus on the real thing. Yeah. I'm not sure if I answered your questions.
Thank you. Very insightful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Elaine has her hand up.
Okay. Now you mentioned, how the Democrats need to do a lot of things, to change. Now, There are several Democrats who I guess you would say they're on the progressive end, but they're just, again, just normal Democrats. They're saying that what needs to be done is to increase the number of judges on the Supreme Court. And some people say, well, if they do that, then they're going to go down a rabbit hole that's going to, backfire in the end. What's your position on that?
Well, I have two things. I mean, I really don't want to go through that path if I were a Democrat or a Republican, meaning that, well, what makes it different? I mean, aren't you sit in the path for when a Congress is controlled by the Republicans to do the same thing? So that's a path, a dangerous path. But it raises a very, very important question, is that how this news is brought up. And why is it the Democrats don't push it further and further to make their case? For example, the biggest thing that we hear is about the defund the police. And even, the Democrats will come and tell you, we're really not saying that. I mean, you have people who are saying that it's true. But the main idea is that no Democrat will tell you that we don't want to have better training for the police. We don't want that the police to respect, the lives. What they're asking is accountability, that you just don't give money for the sake of giving money. So you just give a blanket amount of money, but you have to look at ways of how to improve the legal force. And from that perspective, they are right, because they're saying there are serious problems in training the police. But the Republicans are very, very clever. They focus on the idea using the terms that stays in your mind. The Democrats don't don't do that. What I'm saying is that, yes, you have a serious challenge. You want the Supreme Court to be more representative, which I agree, it has to be more representative. I mean, when you look at the 9 people there, they are, especially lately, been more political ideologies and laws. So if you feel the need to expand this course, this court, and you have reasons for it, well, drive a message and build it around that message and set mechanisms so that this is not going to be repeated every cycle in the election. So you could do that. But the Democrats, what they do is that they throw ideas like this, and then they live them out, and then they connect them with the Republican, that is, the Republican connect them with a special group, the progressives. Now you hear so many things about the progressive in the Republican media and then the Democratic supported media. In other words, what it is that the Republicans are very clever in portraying this group. When you look at their agenda, is the agenda that we all sort of support. Where, for example, these days, how can you go and tell a student who is taking his 4-year degree that it is better to go to school and get your degree than going outside and find a job? It is better to have thousands of dollars of debts than no degree. It's a challenge that you have to think about, and it's a serious challenge. What it means is that the message that the conservative, the progressive are projecting is the real message. I mean, we're talking about education for free education. Who doesn't want to support that? And why is that a message that we can portray? Look at how much we spend on military. I mean, one of the challenge, and one of the reasons we are involved in the Ukraine, and we have every president has a war, his war, except Donald Trump, by the way, since the World War II, is the fact that the military budget, is huge, and it could do things. Why is it, for example, we found $17 billion to give in assistance to Ukraine, while our kids just down here are suffering from issues? That's the progress message. I mean, yes, you may not like the language, but it appeals to reason. It's social justice. I mean, we're talking about education. When you have a doctorate student who has $250,000 debt, and this is a real one, over $200,000 in debt, what does that tell to the minority? That you're never going to be a doctor, a PhD. And what does that mean? Is that you in a way you're limiting education to minorities, because a minority cannot afford the $2,100 debts. I mean, they're going to make themselves live all the time. Today, we're talking about giving free loan, $50,000 in debt relief to students. I mean, you have people petitions who are saying, wait, I mean, this is illegal and you're doing all of that. That's nonsense. So the point is that look at the message, don't look at the messenger. What the Republicans are doing is using these messages as brought by progressives that are communists, that do not know the American system, that they are anti-American. And that's what Democrats are failing to do, is make these issues as real issues. It's not about that progressist or that person. It's about the real thing. I mean, you're talking about, the lives that we all do. In today's politics, how can you justify? And again, I mean, it sounds like, I'm against what's happening in Ukraine and that we should not be helping. No, you could have a balance. How can you justify helping outside people where we are in desperate need to help internally? Those are questions that the Democrats should address. Unfortunately, the Republicans have been good in deviating in talking about this discussion. In these elections, perhaps one of the most important issues is, the Supreme Court decisions on abortion. That is an issue that rallies the minorities. But what we're hearing on the news is, other issues. Ukraine is dominating the issues. Inflation is dominating the issue. It takes you away from the real issue. And the last point on this, when it comes to voting, the Republicans tend to vote strategically, where they think of their party long terms. We Democrats, or the Democrats, I should say, are tactical. They vote about now. Well, he didn't do this, I'm not going to do it. But the idea is not, is it better to have somebody who supports your ideology, your social agenda, versus somebody who doesn't? That's also the other thing. So the point I guess I'm trying to say is, for democracy to work, you have to have people active and the parties playing a prominent role and taking positions in this case that serves the country well, or better than well, I should say. Yeah. I got excited about that one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'm looking at the chat. Now I think I'm getting good at this. All right, but any questions? Is Jeffrey here? Is it my decision to end this? Well, I think anybody else has a question? Okay. I see none, and I sound like a parliamentarian.
I think we're good online. I don't think there's any more questions online.
There's no more questions online, and there is no one who wants to say any words. Okay. Well, I thank you very much for this invitation. And I think I hope we continue having this discussion, and certainly there's plenty of work to do out there. I look forward to seeing your campus, as I see some of you here every day, sometimes, or I should say, I'm glad we have this partnership. And thank you for all the work you do for the university and for yourself. And hopefully we'll see us again. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you very much. You have in the chat a lot of people saying thank you for very informative.